Good morning, Cypress.
Good morning.
Did he just pray for the Bucks at church? I love it. I love it. Well, as Richard said, what was that?
Go Eagles!
Okay, well, all right, we better shut this down before it gets out of hand. Hey, like Richard said, I just want to say welcome to all of our guests and first-time visitors. My name's Eric. I'm the lead pastor here, and so if I didn't get a chance to meet you on your way in, I'd love to catch you on your way out. But just excited that you're with us, whether you're here in the room or joining us online. So I'm curious, how many of you have ever seen this television show called Alone? Anybody ever seen Alone? Okay, a few hands going up. All right, a few. Okay, awesome. So Amanda and I discovered this show a few years ago, and we got totally into it. We were obsessed. We binged watch a few seasons of it, and it's really incredible. So if you've not seen it, I want to kind of explain how the show works because it's really pretty fascinating. So what they do in this show Alone, it's really a survival reality TV series that's produced by the History Channel, and it's really pretty unique. And so the way this works is what they do is every season, and they've done this for 9 or 10 seasons now, but they'll take 10 survival experts, people who are proven, legit survival experts, and they will drop them into some pretty remote and wild places all over the world. They've used some remote areas of Canada, and including the Arctic and places like Patagonia. And so they'll drop these people off in these wild, remote places. Usually it's around late fall, so right as the weather's beginning to turn. And all they have are just a handful of tools and supplies and some clothing provisions that they've selected. And the whole object of this experience is to see how long they can survive in those elements and in those conditions and to be the last ones standing. And for those who make it the longest, they win the grand prize of $1 million. But the catch is, and the name kind of gives it away, that every single one of them, they are completely alone, all by themselves. There's not even a film crew with these survivors out in the wild. And so what they do is they actually give all of these people their own filming equipment, and so they have to lug that stuff with them everywhere they go, filming everything they do, all by themselves, all on their own, because they are completely alone. And it's pretty fascinating to watch this because all of them kind of have their own special skills and kind of their own approach to how they survive in these conditions. But all of them always go after the top 3 things, right? They need a shelter. And so they build some shelters. And these are pretty sophisticated long-term shelters because they're really settling in for the long haul. And then, of course, they have to find drinkable water, fresh, clean water. And then they have to find and establish a food source. And so really, in a lot of ways, it kind of reminded me of when we moved to Florida last year because right away, we had to brave the rental market and find shelter. And then we had to find the closest beach so we could enjoy water. And then we had to find the closest Publix, our food source. So anyway, that was kind of cheesy. I got a bigger laugh before I explained it. So anyway, but it's pretty easy to survive here in Florida. But these people, when they're out there in these incredible places, they have to overcome just extreme environments and elements. And they have to overcome food scarcity. And they have to overcome these close encounters with dangerous wildlife. All of them have gotten pretty close to bear and wolves and even mountain lions and things like that. And so when it becomes too much and they just can't take it anymore, they radio for help and they tap out. And at that point, their game is over. But those who've won every season, those who've made it the longest, have been able to survive in those conditions for anywhere from 70 to 100 days. And it's pretty incredible. But those who tap out, they do this for a variety of reasons, right? And you can probably imagine what some of those reasons would be. But a lot of times, they end up getting sick or they injure themselves, and so they have to tap out because of that. Or a lot of times, they're just starving. They're just not getting enough food, and they're losing a dangerous amount of weight, and so they'll tap out, or they'll actually be removed from the game at times because they just, for their own wellness and safety. But one of the biggest reasons that people will tap out of this experience. As you're watching this, there's been many seasons and many people who tapped out. You're watching them and you're thinking, man, they're healthy and they're thriving. It's like they're in their element. And they're positioned to go the distance, they could win this thing. And then suddenly they tap out. And the biggest reason why is because they just can't take being alone. They just can't take it. In fact, in many cases, it's they thought this was their dream scenario, right? They were looking forward to this. In fact, more than one of them have said that they thought this was going to be a adventure of a lifetime, right? Something they've been looking forward to, something they were ready for. But then they got out there and they started to realize that it just felt meaningless. without the people closest to them there to share it with them. And even the thought of winning $1 million just wasn't worth the extreme loneliness that they were experiencing. And with that acknowledgement, I believe all of them have experienced something that I think is just so hardwired into us as human beings, right? That we need people around us, right? We need community. In fact, I would even take this a step further to say that you and I, we were created for this kind of relational connection. And nothing of any real meaning in this life can be or was really meant to be fully experienced outside of relationships with others who can share in it with us. It's like one of my favorite poets, what he said, that it's always better when we're together, right? It's always better when we're together. So here's where I'm going with this morning. And if you're here this morning or you're watching online and you're in a season right now where you're just struggling in your faith, or if you're here today or watching and you're thinking, man, I don't even know if I have faith, like I'm really unsure about my faith. Or maybe some of you might even say, my faith is really growing right now. And so at this point, I think I've hopefully captured everybody. And so wherever you are this morning, I hope you hear this as really good news. Because it is. It's very good news, and here it is. Following Jesus was never meant to be done alone. Following Jesus was never meant to be done alone. And as we move further into the teaching this morning, I want us to see that, in fact, on the contrary, Jesus set things up for his followers so that his followers could follow him, and they would follow him in authentic relationship with one another. And even while this may come as good news, to know that we don't have to, in fact, we were never meant to journey through faith on our own. I think still a lot of us, we bring a certain level of resistance to this idea of bringing others into our journey on a real and personal level. And I think this is true regardless of what the journey looks like, right? I mean, for Jesus followers and non-Jesus followers alike, we tend to push back. We resist on this idea of authentic, like vulnerable relationships with other people. And here's, I think, at least one reason why. Because on some level, we're afraid that if other people really got to know the real me, then they probably wouldn't love me, right? Like if I let someone in just a little too close and they start to see my weaknesses, or they start to see my flaws, and they start to see that I really don't have it all together and that I'm barely keeping it together most of the time. Like if they got close enough to see the real me, then they would probably think less of me, right? In fact, and besides, if I open myself up to real relationships, I'm also just opening myself up to real rejection and real betrayal and real abandonment. And those things really hurt. And so maybe the idea of bringing others into our journey starts to sound more scary than it does helpful or hopeful. And I wonder how much of that really plays into this mindset that I've heard from several well-meaning Jesus followers over the years. And they'll say things like, that I've heard this said before, like, I really don't need people in my life. I don't need to bring others into my journey. All I need is just me and my Bible and God. And when you hear that, it almost sounds good. It almost sounds right. And sometimes we hear that and we think, wow, that's almost pious. Like, maybe that's a level that I need to strive toward. Like, all I need is just me and my Bible and my God. But there's an irony with that mindset, because really there's no way that we can actually live out the things that God teaches us in the Bible if we're not living in community with one another. And so I want to open the scriptures this morning and to see what it has to say on this subject and what it teaches us in regards to the importance of Jesus-centered community. And so we're in week 3 of this teaching series we've called Now What? So we have a new lead pastor. Now what, right? And we've been just exploring some things that I know have been foundational for us as a church over the years, and things that I also know are going to be absolutely vital for us moving forward. And what I've tried to do throughout this series is just approach each of these teachings by looking into the experiences of the first century followers of Jesus. In fact, more specifically, I wanted to go back with you to just look more closely at the guys who were closest to Jesus, to see what their journey was like, so we could draw some inspiration for our journey from theirs. And so this morning, as we open the scriptures, we're going back to the very start of their journey. And one of the places that we look to for this is in the book of Matthew, in chapter 4, starting in verse 18. So let me read this for us. One day as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, also called Peter, and Andrew, throwing a net into the water, for they fished for a living. Jesus called out to them, "Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. So here in this passage, we see Jesus use this phrase that if you were with us last week, we've seen him use this before. In fact, if we had the time and we could just do this, just kind of retrace Jesus' ministry and his life throughout the scriptures, we would find that he used this phrase pretty often. And here Jesus is he's starting out with his ministry. He's actually launching his mission by calling these two fishermen, Peter and Andrew. And he uses this familiar phrase that he would use again and again. It's this phrase, "Follow me." Right? Follow me. And now we talked about this a little bit last week. If you remember that Jesus, he was a Jewish rabbi. Right? And so when a rabbi would say to someone, "Follow me," really this was an invitation for that person to be the rabbi's student. But it actually goes much deeper than that. Because to follow your rabbi meant leaving behind everything and devoting your life to that rabbi as your master and your teacher, so that over time you would pick up and carry forward your rabbi's teachings and your rabbi's beliefs and your rabbi's practices, and one day you would actually pass them on to someone else. And so with that in mind, I've been saying throughout this series that when Jesus said, "Follow me," it was really this invitation to become his apprentice, right? To apprentice under Jesus. And this was Jesus' invitation to Peter and Andrew that day. And it says here in this text, it says that they responded by dropping their fishing nets at once. Right? At once. I mean, there wasn't even this now what moment of hesitation. It just says at once they followed and they became the first two apprentices of Jesus. And soon there would be 10 more, 12 in total, and every one of them were called with that same invitation, "Follow me." And when Jesus called, each of them answered, and that meant that they had to leave behind their careers in fishing or tax collecting or whatever other pursuits they may have had. They were dropped at once in order to follow Jesus and join him on this journey of apprenticeship. And so what I want to do really with the bulk of this teaching moving forward is just take some time to explore what this journey would have looked like. Like, what did it look like to actually follow Jesus for these original apprentices of Jesus? And because first of all, I mean, if you look at this in just a very practical and literal way, following Jesus looked like following Jesus. like literally, I mean, they just walked with him from place to place. And wherever he went, they were never more than just a few steps behind him, always walking toward him, with very few exceptions. And then along the way, Jesus, as they were following him, walking toward him, and he opened his life to them, right? And he shared everything with them. He taught them things, he showed them things, he spent every moment of every day pouring into them. And this went on for 3 years. But following Jesus like this as they went from place to place, it was never really about getting to a destination, right? It wasn't about where they were going, it was about who they were becoming along the way. And even just going back to this passage we just looked at, I mean, Jesus, he calls to Peter and Andrew, he says, "Follow me," but then he says this, he says, "I will show you how to fish for people." And this was brilliant, right? Because, I mean, these were fishermen. And so Jesus was speaking their language. He was appealing to the ways that they saw and understood the world. And Jesus wanted them to see that there was more to their lives than the fish that were filling their nets and the coins that would be filling their purses. There was more to life than just catching fish. And so this journey that he was inviting them into was really more about becoming something, becoming someone. No longer just fishers of fish, but fishers of people. And if they had any doubts as to whether or not they could actually do this or become this, Jesus told them from the very start, he said, "I will show you how." In other words, I will make you, I will equip you, I will make you into this, and I will empower you, I will transform you. And he does the same thing for you and I, right? He does the same thing for us, because when we come to Jesus, we come just as we are. Right? I mean, he accepts us and he loves us for who we are, wherever we are. But his dream for us, his design for our lives and his vision for us is that we would not stay there, right? That we wouldn't just stay where we are. But his dream and his design and his vision for us is that we would become someone new, that we'd become the best version of ourselves, and that we would grow into the people that he's calling us to become. And then just like he did with his original apprentices, he shows us how to become those people. And that's why Jesus took his apprentices to dinner parties with tax collectors and sinners, like we looked at last week, remember? So he could show them how he loves. And so he could make them into people of his love. Right? I mean, this is why Jesus would put them into challenging situations like we looked at a couple of weeks ago where they were challenged to feed like thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and a few small fish. And then Jesus, he put them in that position so that he could supernaturally provide the resources to them and then send them out to do it. And this was part of their journey. I mean, every day with Jesus, following him, learning from him, observing him, sharing life with him, and constantly moving toward him. And it was transformational. And this was all part of the journey of following Jesus. And for so long, I had always just focused on this part of the journey. I mean, that was my focus. For so long, for me, it was just always about the time that these guys had spent with Jesus and the closeness and the depth of relationship and the incredible privilege of just walking with him everywhere, every day for 3 years. But then a few years ago, as I began to look at this from different perspectives and just explore this a little bit, it occurred to me that their journey wasn't just about walking toward Jesus as they followed him. Because the other part of their journey, in fact, a huge part of their journey, was all the time that they had spent and the experiences that they had shared and the lessons that they had learned and the miles and miles and miles that they had walked together with each other. So over the years, I mean, some of my closest friends that I've developed and friendships that I've built over the years have been the result of some opportunities that I've had to travel internationally with teams of people to different places. And so over the years, I mean, I've just had opportunities to travel to places like the Dominican Republic on a number of times, places like Serbia and Israel and Ethiopia, Uganda, most recently Kenya. And every time I've been able to travel with a team of people. And even as I just mentioned those places, and as I thought about this earlier this week, I mean, immediately it's like the names and the faces of those who were part of that experience with me, or part of those experiences with me, they suddenly came to mind. And in many cases, those first names and those first faces that come up are people who've become lifelong friends as a result of those experiences. Right? And when you think about this, I mean, when you're sharing those kind of experiences, you're traveling abroad and you're doing ministry work together and that kind of stuff, I mean, from the moment you begin your travel, it's like you're spending every minute of every day with those people. And you get over there and you're working hard every day, and then you're eating every meal together, you're spending time together in the evenings, and I mean, you're pushed out of your comfort zone, you're going through some hard stuff, some challenging stuff. People see you at your best and at your worst. Right? And so we spent all of this time together in these experiences, and it's almost like this pressure cooker. Right? I mean, just the time that you spend with people and the close proximity and then those shared experiences, it just has a way of galvanizing those connections and those relationships. And as I thought about this, I realized, for me, it was in those teams that we got to share these experiences with, I mean, those were never more than 2 to 3 weeks at a time. But these guys, these first apprentices of Jesus, I mean, they were together for 3 years. And just think about the amount of life that these guys shared together. Think about the meals that they ate together, right? The campfires that they would have sat around together, the stories that they shared together. And I just imagine, I mean, they had to have some inside jokes, right? I mean, just the friendship and the camaraderie that they built. And then think about the trials, right? The challenges that they walked through, the failures, and the victories, the miracles and all the amazing things that they got to witness. And again, every minute of every day for 3 years. And you can't tell me that these guys weren't forged together in some deep bonds of brotherhood as a result of this. And those relationships that they formed with each other were absolutely foundational to their faith journey. And those relationships were absolutely pivotal in the process of them becoming the people that Jesus was calling them to, and staying the course that God had called them to. And here's what I hope we all take away from this. That following Jesus has always been a journey of walking toward him with each other. Following Jesus has always been a journey of walking toward him with each other. And of course, we can't truly follow Jesus without walking toward him as our Lord and our teacher. The scriptures refer to him as the author and the perfecter of our faith. In other words, he is the standard that we're always moving toward and we're modeling our lives after. And this means that as we're following Jesus and we're learning more about him through the scriptures, and as we start to become aware of those areas of our lives that don't look like Jesus, and those areas of our lives that don't line up with the person that he's calling us to be, then we have to set those things aside. Right? We have to leave those things behind, and we take another step toward him and toward the person that he sees in us and that he's calling us to become, the person who looks more like him. And this is why that we also cannot truly follow Jesus apart from a community of Jesus followers. This always has been, and still is, and always will be a vital part of your journey and my journey. Because just like his original apprentices, we need other followers of Jesus surrounding us and walking with us for us to become the people that God is calling us to and to stay the course that God has called us to. I love what the ancient Hebrew wisdom writer said. He said, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. I love how another pastor and author puts this. He says, God uses people to form people. He uses people to form people. God works in and through the Jesus-centered relationships around us to encourage us and to motivate us, to help us grow, to sharpen and shape us into followers of Jesus more fully devoted to him, who are becoming more like him. And so authentic, God-honoring community is absolutely pivotal to our faith journey and our spiritual formation. The bottom line, following Jesus was never meant to be done alone. It has always, from the very beginning, been a journey of walking toward Jesus with each other. So as we were making our way into Cypress now, almost exactly a year ago, we were introduced to a couple here. Many of you know Phil and Tracy Warren. And they've been a part of Cypress for a long time. And, the entire time that we've known the Warrens, Tracy has been walking through an intense battle with cancer. And as you can imagine, it's just been an incredibly difficult, challenging season for both Phil and Tracy. But one of the things that we learned pretty quickly about them is that, as hard and as difficult and as challenging as this season has been for them, they've not been walking through it alone. Because Phil and Tracy are surrounded by 4 other couples who are part of their small group here at Cypress. And I learned this past week that this small group has been together for now over 4 years, almost 5 years. But some of those relationships I understand they go back, in some cases, 20 years or more. And so as I've gotten to know the Warrens a lot better over these past few months, and I've gotten to know more about their small group and getting to know the couples in that small group, and as I've heard more and more about what this group has been up to and just the ways that they've been coming around Phil and Tracy, I began to look at this group and began to see this group as just an incredible and beautiful example of the kind of community that you and I are created for, the same kind of community that we see modeled in the life of Jesus and his followers. And now as Tracy's cancer is progressing and she is very near the end of her fight, this group has stayed deeply connected to Phil and Tracy and intimately involved in caring for and supporting them in a variety of ways. Just the ways that they've showed up and walked with them, sometimes through just meeting some very practical needs and bringing them some food and other things that they need at the time. And other times they just come around them to provide the love and the emotional care and support that they need, that both of them need. And this group has surrounded Phil and Tracy in the ways that demonstrate what Jesus-centered community is supposed to look like. But what these group members shared with me through some emails that were exchanged earlier this past week is that through this experience, the group's love for one another and their depth of relationship with each other has grown so much stronger through this season with Tracy and Phil. And here's what they shared with me when I just asked, what these relationships have meant to them. And I'm just going to read little snippets of the emails that they sent to me. But Mary Stills said, this group has helped us by always being there, walking with us through life, the ups and downs with kids, parents, and so on. And then Stacy Brinson said, "For me, I feel the authenticity of our group is our strongest bond. All 10 of us are very honest and open about our past and our shortcomings and our struggles. And you know you are never going to be judged." And then Selena Dautel said this. She said, "I know I can be my true, authentic self with this group. Crying with one another, praying for each other, celebrating our victories, and laughing together. I can't imagine not having this group of individuals in my life." And then she said this, "They make me better, and I love them all dearly." Amanda and I had an opportunity to spend just a little time with Phil and Tracy on Friday. And toward the end of that visit, Phil told me, he said, "I cannot imagine walking through this season without God in my life, but I cannot imagine walking through this season without these people in my life." So let me just ask you as we bring this teaching to a close this morning, who's walking with you? Who's walking with you? As you face the uncertainties of life, as you grapple with the testing of your faith, and as you process and explore who Jesus is, who's walking with you? Who's loving you and encouraging you and strengthening you and challenging you and showing up for you? In the name of Jesus, who's walking with you? As I think about the future of Cypress, I know and I believe this is so absolutely vital for us moving forward. We have to move forward with a steadfast commitment to not only keep walking toward Jesus, but walking together with each other. And that's why we gather like this on Sunday mornings, right? Twice a Sunday, every single Sunday. But the truth is that the connections that we experience here, as incredible and important and essential as they are, they're just not deep enough. That's why we need to also gather in smaller groups, just like Jesus with his 12 apprentices and just like Phil and Tracy and the community that they have around them. So here's my call to action this morning, and it's pretty simple. It's just this. Get together. Right? Just get together. Outside of Sunday mornings here at Cypress, get together with a few others who are following Jesus for an hour or two each week and just be together. Right? Be with them and pray with them and discuss the scriptures and the teachings from Sunday with them and just share your life with them. And if you know already that you need this and you want this and you're looking for this, but you just don't know where to start, we're going to make this pretty simple this morning. And so in a few weeks, October 8th, we're going to begin a new teaching series here called Catch Your Breath. It's going to be our fall series, and with this series, we're going to be launching a whole new season of small groups, and we're going to be encouraging everyone here at Cypress to get in a group as we go through this series together starting in the fall. And so this morning, we are actually beginning the process of signing up for those groups. And so here's what I would encourage you and challenge you to do starting today, and you can do this a couple of ways. But first of all, as you walk out of here this morning, and you walk through our main doors onto our patio, you see the tent, and Michelle, our connections director, is going to be out there at the tent, and she has handouts that actually list the open groups that we have. And those handouts have some basic information about those groups and when they meet and what kind of group they are, and even has some contact information for who's leading that group. And so you can look over that, find a group that fits, and just contact that group leader. The other thing you can do is just look at this slide right here. I mean, we've actually put a QR code on this slide, and you can actually get your phone out, your camera app, and just scan that QR code. It'll take you to our website where you can see the open groups, and you can explore those to find one that fits, and you can contact the group leader and join that group today. I would love to see all of us getting together in a small group this fall where we can invite others to walk with us through this journey of life and faith. And I know that some of you are going to look at this list and you're going to run down the days that they're meeting and the kind of groups that they are, and some of you are going to say, I don't see a group that fits me, fits my schedule, fits who I am, whatever. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to start a group. Start a new group that does fit you, that fits your schedule, because it will fit others' schedules as well, and you'll be able to invite others to go through this journey with you. And listen, I know like sometimes the hang up here is, I'm not a teacher, I don't have a Bible degree, I'm not a theologian, all that stuff, and you don't need to be any of those things to lead a group. if you can just gather a group of friends, and if you can just carry a conversation and read some questions that we're going to provide for you, I mean, you can lead a group. It is very simple. And maybe some of you have been thinking about this already. Maybe some of you have actually kind of felt this, like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. Maybe this is my next step. And you were just waiting for that nudge. Well, here it is. Here's the nudge. And so I think on that handout, there's some information there on how you can start a group. And I would encourage you to look at that. Or you can just contact someone at the church office, and we will get back to you, and we'll walk you through what that looks like. But Cypress, in this journey of faith, we won't make it far if we don't go together. A few years ago, I came across a quote from another church leader who I just thought so brilliantly and powerfully captured the essence and the importance of what authentic Jesus-centered community is really all about. And this is what he said, and I've got it on the screens for us. He said, a Jesus-centered community is a web of stubbornly loyal relationships, knotted together in a living network of persons in a complex and challenging cultural setting who are committed to practicing the way of Jesus together for the renewal of the world. And Cypress, this is my dream for us as a church, that we would become that deeply connected in relationship with one another so that we can continue to be and do all that God is calling us to. And a small group this fall really is just a very simple and a great step in that direction, to seeing that vision and that dream become a reality. And I want that so bad for you and for me and for our entire church. So Cypress, let's get together, right? Let's get together. Let me pray for us. Jesus, would you just open our hearts and our minds to this reality of what it looks like to really follow you, what it's always looked like, that it's always this journey of walking toward you as the standard of who you're calling us to be. And because that is, it's a journey and it's challenging. Lord, you've made it so that we don't have to walk that alone. That, in fact, we were always meant to walk it together with others who are on that same journey with us. And Lord, we need your courage. We need your strength to overcome the fears in our lives, the hang-ups that we may have, and some things that we've just carried with us through our past and into our present, the things that have kept us from stepping into these kind of authentic relationships. Jesus, would you heal us? Would you call us? Would you open us to taking this step, stepping toward you and with others in community? We love you, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you, Cypress. Love you. See you on the patio.